everybody. My name is Jerry Fragiscatos. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at Input Output. I'm here today with Chris Ergen, Head of Innovation at Dish, Charles Hoskinson, CEO of Input Output, and Stephen Stokels, Head of Boost. I'll be moderating the panel today. We are here to reveal some exciting news. Chris, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I'm excited to announce that Dish and Input Output are entering into a strategic collaboration to build blockchain services to make blockchain a core part of our network and consumer strategy.
Thank you, Chris. Let's kick off with our first question. Broadly speaking, where is the point of connection between the blockchain world and the telecom space? Charles, why don't you kick us off with that discussion?
Yeah, so the telco world is a really interesting world. It's about the movement of people, value, data across space and time. And it's really been the key driver of the internet, the key driver of many of the things that we take for granted. And it's gone through many iterations and revolutions, from the old telegraph days to the phone line days to actually starting to transmit actual computing data. And now we're in a situation where we have this desire to have a global network. We have this desire to be one global community and be very consumer focused, where a consumer can seamlessly move from one place to another place and have predictable cost and quality of service for their networking. So they can get their apps and their data where they want it, when they want it, how they want it. The problem is that when you actually look at the underlying business structure of the telecommunications space, it's very ossified, it's very 20th century in its thinking, it's very proprietary, it's very siloed and walled. And that's no good for anybody. It actually reduces the amount of profit businesses can make, and ultimately it hurts the consumer. The point of the blockchain space, just like we're doing for money and just like we're doing for property rights and voting and other things, is to say, can we apply those same techniques and concepts with a tier one carrier to revolutionize connectivity? And it's so exciting to be working with Dish because they're kind of the rebels of the telco space. You know, back from the beginning in the 80s, from their business model, they've gone through many iterations and innovations, and every step of the way, they were always leading and transforming the entire industry that they were in. And now when we look at telco, we think that there's a lot of intersections between the use of identity, the movement of data, capacity exchange, and other things that can be done and explored. And it can be done at a scale of millions to tens of millions of users, and eventually at a global scale. So this is a super exciting relationship and partnership, and it's one that we can't wait to see how it goes. It's very challenging from a protocol viewpoint, an engineering viewpoint. We have to do a lot of science, a lot of innovation, a lot of engineering to be able to make blockchain protocols fit for purpose for the carrier space. And it's also really exciting from a customer experience because telcos have scale in the tens of millions. So these types of deals don't just bring something to a back end at a server somewhere that nobody sees. If you get them right, you can fundamentally transform the entire model and innovate the telco to a point where it's front and center in a person's digital life, their economic life, their consumption life, their media life, and ultimately make it a better, fairer, more transparent and cost-effective experience for everybody.
Thank you, Charles. Stephen, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I'll hammer home the point that Charles just made about sort of the consumer. And if you look at telcos, Boost, already millions of customers, eventually tens of millions of customers, there's scale there. And the ability to actually take blockchain-based technologies and actually innovate, provide new services, whether it be loyalty programs, whether it be actually an expanded ecosystem, and really have a telco and an opportunity to kind of take back some of the value that they've given away to app stores, that they've given away to sort of software providers, and really bring that back to the network piece as well, is a huge opportunity from network all the way to consumer. So we're pretty excited about the types of things we're going to be rolling out very shortly on the consumer side, all the way down to the network side.
Chris, you want to bring it home?
Well, sure. I mean, I think I look at it a little bit more fundamentally, which is that blockchains are useless without connectivity. And so having that as a fundamental part of what we are building to bring the network connectivity that we're putting into the market, as well as the blockchain-based protocols that the Cardano family brings to us, these are going to be two individually powerful technologies that together will be something I think a lot more exponentially bigger.
Yeah, from my standpoint, from a commercial perspective, I find Metcalfe's law comes into play here. So we've got a big network, which is the telecom network. we've got the blockchain network, and as we know, the value of a network is the square of the users or the connections. So it just makes sense that networks work together. That's kind of from my perspective. And we see it in the market, that we see this push towards networks working together. Interoperability is a big thing in our industry, and I think it's only going to grow from here.
Yeah, and one of the core goals of blockchain is about empowering the edges. And it's kind of funny to think of a Fortune 250 company as being on the edges, but in many cases, the way the legacy economy is working, that happens. Whether you're Dish or a small business, in some cases you're at the mercy of the legacy banking system. You're at the mercy of a lot of older regulations and older legacy business models or monopolies or other things that you just have to accept as a fact of life. And this becomes an enormous cost center and ultimately deteriorates the quality of the product and reduces the overall profitability of the enterprise. So the same types of things we're trying to do to transform the life of someone in Senegal or Ethiopia or Tanzania, Zanzibar, at the very individual level, the farmer, the small business owner, the university graduate, we actually try to do to transform the institution, the business. And we're really excited about how can blockchain technology be used for a client like Dish to actually allow them to take back some of their autonomy and power about the relationship with their customer, how payments work, how identity works, and ultimately how they want to do business and compete in the 21st century. Because they're a business, they have the right to do that, and it shouldn't be taken from them because of artifacts of legacy systems or other problems. And ultimately feel that if this is successful, it'll become the default business model for the telecommunications space, which will continue that reputation and legacy Dish has had of always being one of the first movers and the disruptors in this space. So we're really excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, I think there was one point that surprised me when we started working with Dish and Boost. Input-output is really focusing on the emerging world because people are underserviced there. But when we started working with Dish and Boost, we realized that there's a large population within the US that's also underserviced, and blockchain can actually fill that gap in the first world as well as the developing world. That was another discovery that I made working with Dish. So how did the collaboration between the Dish family come about, and what is the ultimate aim of the partnership? I know this started between Charles and Chris through a mutual connection. Why don't you kick us off on this topic?
Well, we were one of the first public companies in the world to start accepting cryptocurrency as payments. So in 2014, I think it was, is when we sort of entered the fringes of the blockchain space. And I've been investigating how we can leverage this technology to help improve our business and help the experience for our customers for some time. And thanks to a mutual friend who introduced Charles and I, we met earlier this year. And I think I was immediately impressed with his way of thinking and the way he sees blockchain interacting in the world. And I thought that it was just a great opportunity for us to engage with somebody that was competent and had some really big vision for what we could do together. And so it started to really snowball from there. And so here we are 9 months later.
Yeah, it's been an amazing relationship. Usually when you think about Fortune 500, Fortune 250, Fortune 100, as you get to these larger and larger corporations, there's typically all this enormous bureaucracy that exists in these companies. And you kind of start in the front door and you slowly but surely work your way through to be able to cut all that bureaucracy out and talk to the inner circle of the company about, well, where do you want to go in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Where do you think your industry is going to go? And then say, okay, well, what do we have as a company in our portfolio that we can give to you as a company to use to get you where you need to go? Was just an incredible conversation. I think we probably have had 2-3 calls every week for 9 months. And there's been enormous amounts of work that's gone into every a piece of the relationship. But what we've been constantly impressed with is the level of competence, skill, and passion that the Dish and the Boost team has demonstrated throughout all of this. We've never really encountered bureaucracy. And if it is, Chris has done a phenomenal job of hiding it from us. I'm sure he's had to do that. And that's been a great honor. And the other thing is that we had the freedom to innovate in this deal. So we've invented entirely new things like proof of bandwidth, and we've thought about identity very differently as a consequence. And it's forced us as a company to actually really put the consumer front and center. We're so obsessed with writing scientific papers and all this formal methods code and these things. Sometimes you can forget that there's actual human beings at the other side of it. And what I love about working with Chris and Steve is that they always remind us of that. Like, what's the product? What's the vision? What's the consumer experience? How is this going to benefit the consumer, and so forth? And also, how do we get this to market quickly? Not 5 years, not 10 years, but how can we iterate and get it in now, and where can that happen? So that's been very refreshing that a much larger company than us has been moving faster than us in certain respects and kind of kicking us to make sure that we get things done. On the other hand, what we bring to the table in the relationship has always been that rigor. And when we look at the track record of our industry, it has a track record of being very fast moving, tremendously innovative, and not caring so much about the hacks, the mistakes, or these other things. And that might work when you're a small business in Silicon Valley trying to find a business model. That can't work when you're a business with tens of millions of relationships, a 40-year history, and trust and regulation. So you need to know it works right the first time. And that's one of our expertise and specialty as a company, and something that's unique to our organization that we bring to the table is this idea of the use of formal methods and peer review, and being able to apply that to get a much higher level of assurance that the software is right and it's secure. On average, when compared to where the industry's at, I think ultimately that collaboration is going to be both innovative and also safe and suitable for the customers and regulators in this industry. And that's what makes it one of the most unique collaborations. We're moving at Silicon Valley startup speeds. We're real time having 2-3 calls a week. We're almost as if we're a small company in that respect, but yet the products, the services, the infrastructure is being built in a very safe way. And I don't think anyone's ever done a collaboration like this before of this nature. And it's been real fun, real hard, but real fun.
Stephen? Yeah, and it's not just the technology that's been impressive about Charles and team, yourself included. It's the focus on the consumer. When we kind of came in and took over Boost a year ago, it was really looking at the telecom space from a different perspective. Right now, if you look at the consumer wireless customer, they're bombarded with, I've got the fastest network and I'm $5 cheaper. And that's the messaging. Charles and team kind of share the same sort of view as us. We kind of look at it at how can we really deliver a deeper value to the consumer? How can we connect the consumer across a broader set of services in a more lubricated way? How can we bring new digital services to the consumer? How can we actually give an underserved, underbanked population access to banking services, cryptocurrency? Bitcoin is the number 2 most searched term on Google right now, yet if you look at the actual data, there's still under 15% that actually have ever even owned a Bitcoin, let alone the rest of the crypto infrastructure. So when you look at it from a consumer perspective, that's what makes, I think, IOG, the team, Charles, Jerry, very, very sort of unique in that they not only understand the technology and how to scale and how to do it in a way that's very sort of startup-centric and rapid, but also the consumer and they have a very strong consumer focus, as do we, and a consumer focus from really providing value, real, true, intrinsic value to the consumer. And at the end of the day, if you do that, you're going to win from a consumer business like Boost. And so that shared sort of ideology and passion is what I'm most excited about.
I also feel that there's almost a natural connection in the sense that the way people mostly interact with the blockchain space is through their mobile phone. And also at the base layer, the infrastructure is the mobile telco infrastructure. So I almost feel that the two industries are gravitating towards each other. And we've seen this in Africa with World Mobilecom already. And with Dish, this is expanding like by a factor. So I see more and more of this happening in the industry.
And it's going to be fun to explore emerging markets. Once you get the model here, there's always ways to syndicate and franchise the business model. And that's the other cool part of this relationship is what we've built is this nice corpus where experiments can rapidly be done every 3 to 6 months. New business verticals can be pursued, new markets can be pursued. And then basically Dish and Boost are in the driver's seat in that respect. And they get to decide, hey, well, what do we want to do this quarter? What do we want to play with this quarter? And every time you do it, the cost of experimentation goes down and you preserve all the ground that you've gained. And you also, in many cases, will gain customers from other less adventurous and less innovative telcos. So overall, the entire subscription base grows. So that's the other part of the deal that always gets me excited is that if it was just about making something 5% better or 10% better or shaving off 10% of a cost, it's a very boring job. What we're talking about here is the capacity to reinvent what it means to be a telco company in a 10-year period or a 15-year period. And this collaboration is perfectly well suited to ensure that those tools are accessible at the right place, the right time, at the right cost, and the right scale for everybody.
Let's talk about identity, or decentralized identity to be more precise. So this is a crucial foundational component for our emerging partnership. Our product's called Untitled Prism. How does Untitled Prism help your customers at Dish and at Boost? Steve, why don't we start with you on this one?
Absolutely. So it's really on 2 major facets. Obviously, there's or maybe not that obvious, but there's a huge sort of data protection and privacy advantage to having a sort of decentralized identity, security, anti-fraud, et cetera. So from a technical perspective alone, there's huge value. But above and beyond that, when we talk about sort of deeper consumer value, it provides the ability to really ramp and scale a third-party ecosystem where consumers can participate in new services seamlessly without having to go through a lot of rigor. And that allows consumers, like I said from the get-go, who are potentially cut off from certain services, whether it be banking, whether it be sort of anything, gambling, commerce, you name it. It allows for a very sort of lubricated, transparent kind of entry into new offerings, as well as just making the third-party ecosystem more robust and more sort of scalable. So we're excited about that from multiple facets, and I think we'll start to prove out the real power of the decentralized ID very quickly here.
All right, Charles?
Yeah, it's identity is such a fundamentally human thing, and it's amazing that we haven't, as a collective global society, figured out this problem yet. We have passports, we have driver's licenses, we have paper identity, we have some notions of digital identity, but right now digital identity is a very fragmented affair. Your digital identity you use to register to vote is distinctly different than how you manage your medical records, from how you manage your personally identifiable information with regulated financial institutions. And even the people you would think would get it right about safety, security, privacy, have gotten it horrifically wrong. I think one of the biggest moments in US history was the OPM hack, the Office of Personnel Management. There you have a database that contains the names and information of all the people who applied for and got security clearances. So our spies, our generals, our military, deeply personal information about them, their relationships, other things, held by a very secret government agency. It gets hacked and 22 million files have been lost since the 1970s. If that kind of agency has difficulty keeping data secure, it's unrealistic to assume that Fortune 500 small businesses, individuals are going to be able to do that in the old paradigm. So you need to change the paradigm a little bit and push power to the edges and put the consumer front and center with their digital life, and their access control, their personally identifiable information. And to Stephen's point, the ability to create liquidity where you can easily move between these different fragmented systems is incredibly important, because that liquidity ultimately is the difference between you having $10 of revenue and $1 million of revenue. It's the difference between a low value customer that's worth 50 cents lifetime value and $2,000 lifetime value. The more that they do in your ecosystem, the more they can do in the ecosystem, the easier it is for them to connect to services, the easier it is for third parties to come in and connect their services to your services. That is really where we need to be at in 2021 and beyond for businesses to be competitive. And when you talk about identity and data, it seems to be stuck in a very 1980s, 1990s mainframe paper world. And very rapidly, the next 3 to 5 years, that's going to fundamentally change. You see it with Facebook and the metaverse. You see it with some of the products Google is building. You see it with some of the products that Microsoft is building. And the telco space can't be left behind because, as Chris has said, they're really layer zero. They're the backbone upon which all of this stuff runs. And if they don't do it, it's going to be a lot harder to do it layer 1 and layer 2 and higher up layers. If they do it at the backbone layer, then that becomes the skeleton key that we can use to connect all of these services, and we'll get better safety, better security, better privacy, and ultimately more velocity of commercial transactions. And that's where we want to be at.
Chris?
Yeah, I think Charles said it pretty well there, but in the United States, our Social Security cards are an actual piece of paper. And to think that your identity and your ability to prove your identity can be ruined by spilling a cup of coffee onto a document is very old world. So we're very excited to be moving into the future with identity and how we can utilize that to enable a host of services, and it won't be able to be ruined by an accident.
And the other thing is that you think about a modern company, we think about identity in terms of people, but there's also sensors, there's IoT devices, there's drones. When we looked at 2025, 2030, and beyond, the very notion of what is an autonomous agent, an object, what is something that needs an identifier is fundamentally changing. And being a telecommunication company, there's probably more non-human things that you guys have to identify in your stack than human things in the stack. So what's so beautiful about this collaboration is what we're trying to figure out is bedrock. So we're trying to figure out what is a universal identifier that's built with standards, like through the W3C and so forth, that's open and not vendor specific, that can be integrated into this type of infrastructure. So then not only can you build on that and get a lot of great functionality about that, but then you have maximum business flexibility in the places you want to go, the people you want to work with, the systems you want to interoperate with. For example, this Cardano collaboration is great for Cardano, but at the end of the day, these credentials and assets can very easily also be embedded in Ethereum and Bitcoin and other ecosystems. And so that puts Dish and Boost in the driver's seat about what is best for the business, what is best for the customer, what is best for the consumer. And there are going to be many cases where it turns out that there are other experiences that are best. There was another large company that actually had to go through this renaissance, and it turned out to be one of the greatest business transformation stories of all time. It was the transformation of Microsoft. They used to have this very closed mindset of Windows first and forever. We can never work with Android and Apple. We can't work with competitors. We have to build everything internally. And then when they opened it up, they said sometimes it's okay to release an app on an Apple product before Windows. Sometimes it's okay just to be mobile first and not actually have a Windows mobile. And now they're, I think, almost a $2 trillion company. Far more profitable, far more resilient, far more loved. And that's exactly the kind of transformation we expect to see in the telecommunications space. The first people to embrace open standards, the first people to embrace maximal flexibility in the business model, agility, and to Stephen's point, the ability to create velocity in the commercial transactions, that is the stuff that creates the 10x growth and the 100x growth. And that's the stuff that transforms the telco from just a layer zero boring infrastructure company into a company that becomes a kingmaker for entire verticals in the industry and has a more balanced relationship with their customer base, which will be ever growing.
Let me just hammer one point home, because I think what Charles is talking about is extremely important, and bringing it back to the consumer. But other companies, obviously us taking the lead is good for us, but it's also good for a broad ecosystem of everybody who kind of follows. Because if you think about it, if you want access to tens of millions of customers and you're a financial services firm or you're an insurance company, sharing that same underlying digital infrastructure for digital identification allows you to kind of get access in a very seamless way without having to do a business development relationship and a formal 6-month legal documents and a partnership to be able to kind of bring everybody together. And so again, it's not just good for us at Boost and Dish, but it's going to be good for the entire ecosystem and other third parties that want to participate in it.
I 100% agree. I mean, I take this one very personally. I think there's a new feature in iOS where it kind of lists all the accounts that have been hacked or have been on some kind of leak. And I looked at the list and it's almost every single one of my accounts. And we've almost accepted this as normal. And if I know personally, if a provider like Boost offers a secure ID where I can be assured that won't happen, I would switch carriers. Of course, like you said, they all provide similar performances. The price points are almost equivalent. If I could get this, I would definitely switch carriers. And I think millions of other people would do the same thing. And I think there's an education to be done, because it almost feels like we've given up this right. We didn't even know that we gave it up. And now there's a new opportunity to get it back. I think that's extremely powerful.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of SIM boosting just within the cryptocurrency industry. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been stolen just by people illegally porting cell phone numbers and getting access to people's Coinbase account and other places. And that's just such a fundamental thing of, how do we know our relationship with our customer? How do we make sure that that customer is actually who they say they are? That should be easy to solve in 2021. But because legacy infrastructure makes it hard, that's a problem. And it's a problem at scale across the entire industry. And to your point, there seems to be a great degree of tone deafness to that, which is because, they're ossified monopolies. And how you win is you disrupt that. And you just kind of bring something revolutionary new. And if you get it right, everybody else follows. And then it makes the entire industry better for everyone.
And look, the core principle here is it's the customer really owning their own identity here. And so at the very fundamental basic here, you got a customer who owns his own identity versus a company owning the customer's identity. So I think just even from that perspective, it's a completely different way of sort of approaching identity than sort of the probably 150 different companies right now own my identity. And this is taking it, and it gives me as a consumer the chance to take that back and own it myself.
That's right. Another big part of our partnership is tokenized loyalty points. This is more for Boost. This is something that will help Boost customers. Can you give us some inputs about how that's going to help the customer, generally speaking?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at loyalty programs, probably the airline industry is your biggest example of success. And I think you guys have kind of shared some data points. American Airlines is their loyalty programs worth $30 billion of consumer value, right, or of corporate value. But more broadly, you look at the loyalty programs, there's a ton of consumer value that's come out of these. And again, the airlines, third-party ecosystem, I can use those points for flights, obviously, but I can use them for hotels, I can use them for car rentals, I can use them outside of the travel space, I can use them to redeem cash. So they've built out very robust third-party ecosystems. Now, Boost is going to be the first telco to really embrace not only a loyalty program, but a blockchain-based loyalty program. And the reason that the blockchain piece is important here is because we're going to be able to catch up to what the airlines have built over decades in a matter of months, maybe a year, right? We'll have an ecosystem because blockchain gives us the ability to have third parties engage in the ecosystem very quickly, as we've talked about already, allows transferability. So yes, obviously a Boost customer will earn loyalty points by doing various actions, paying their bills, signing up, inviting a friend, et cetera, et cetera. But the ability to redeem those points for not just money off your bill or a new phone, but into cash, into Bitcoin, into Cardano, into a hotel, into a flight, into all kinds of third-party services, into financial services. That ability, enabled by blockchain, will sort of accelerate a loyalty program decades from what it might take if we were just trying to do things and recreate the airline model. So pretty excited about not just the loyalty program we're doing it, but how we're doing it in collaboration with you guys here.
Yeah, and what's so cool about this type of a program is it's very dynamic. A lot of loyalty programs are static. You're told what you get, and then you operate within the rules of that system, and that's that. The power of blockchain is openness and basically programmability. So you're in a situation where third parties can come in and find new ways and concepts to be able to integrate and use these types of things where they have identity plus loyalty plus wallet infrastructure and other such things, and it all just works on a phone and it's all seamless. So it could end up being the number one consumer of this system 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now is a company we've never met, we know nothing about, and didn't ask permission. They just built in an open store or something like that. That was kind of the magic of Google Play, the magic of the iOS store, was that all these incredible developers, entrepreneurs, and other businesses came and they had a platform to build on, and then suddenly you could use your flash on your phone as a flashlight. You know, it's just incredible to see the level of innovation that came. And now we're doing that with incentives engineering. We're doing that with loyalty points, and a whole ecosystem can develop. And that ecosystem, as Stephen said, is interoperable with real financial rails. So it's easy to move between different instruments of value and represent different instruments of value, whether that be bandwidth or priority service or cash or whatever it might be. The other thing is that it creates really interesting user-to-user interactions. We do a lot of business in Africa, and one of the great success stories of the 2000s of Africa was the emergence of M-Pesa, where cell phone minutes became currency, which was a really remarkable concept. And so this idea that users now have instruments they can work with for remittances or for whatever they happen to have in their financial life is a really cool concept. And it's going to be really fun to see what the customers come up with. And then, as he said, very rapidly, you could add functionality and features on a quarterly basis to embrace that change so that you can always stay on the bleeding edge of the business model.
Yeah, let me add real quick. To that point, I mean, we expect an ecosystem that's far more expansive than the airline industry within a matter of years, or even quicker perhaps. And again, it's enabled there. And look, at the end of the day, if you think about it, you want access to the Boost customer base and the tens of millions of subscribers, you can do that on your own. You can have access and you can be remunerated by these loyalty points for your access. And so it's pretty exciting from that perspective. And from a Boost customer perspective, look, stay with Boost long enough, we might buy your next house, buy your next car. I mean, it opens up all kinds of value to the consumer as they accumulate these loyalty points that actually have value well beyond the Boost ecosystem as it exists today.
The thing that excites me the most about it is the innovation that we don't know is going to happen. It's like crowdsourcing innovation. You're creating a platform and people with the loyalty points or maybe some other token will power a host of applications that we can't even imagine today. And I think, Chris, from your perspective, I think being able to crowdsource your innovation from your customers, that will actually be more loyal customers, so you get the engagement, the retention, the acquisition, but then you opened up innovation to the world based on this type of program. So I'd love to hear more of your thoughts about that.
Makes my job a lot easier, for one thing. But clearly, networks are much more powerful the bigger they are. And so to be able to go directly to the community that is our customer, the people that we're trying to innovate on behalf of and get their input is incredibly powerful. And I'm hoping that this turns into something that's much, much bigger than just us.
Charles, why don't you bring this home for all of us?
Well, it's a great beginning, and what's really cool is there's collectively a lot of brain power and a lot of goodwill and a lot of truly amazing ideas that are on the table. But for this collaboration to be successful, we got to execute, we got to move forward, and we always have to keep our eye on the prize about the experiences that are needed and the level of participation that's needed. So what's so cool about it is that just in 9 months, we've gone from, hi, nice to meet you, Chris, to this massive fundamental transformation of a Fortune 250 company. And I'm very optimistic that in the coming months to years, we're going to see that collaboration be shared with the millions of Boost customers and eventually the broader ecosystem, the entire cryptocurrency and blockchain space and the entire telecommunications space. This is the kind of deal that I can imagine in a decade horizon involves hundreds of millions, if not billions of people. I'm deeply passionate about it because to do the things we'd like to do as a company, we have to bank the unbanked and connect the unconnected. And that's a tremendous challenge. And to work with a tier one telecommunications company, it not only teaches us how to make our products more competitive and make Cardano a better ecosystem, but it also ultimately teaches us how to bring this type of connectivity and these ideas to continents like Africa, to places like Cuba, to places like South America, to places like Southeast Asia, where there are literally billions of people who are underbanked or unbanked and really need a leg up. So this is a very passionate project for me. And it's something that I'm probably going to spend a huge chunk of my time, and I know Chris has spent probably the majority of his time this year on it. It's been exhausting, but we're always invigorated and recharged by the fact that we actually have a chance to make a real difference in people's lives. And we have a chance to make a very big difference in the industry. And to work with a partner like Dish that's done this for 40 years, again and again and again, literally every time they came in, they were the rebel, the underdog, the disruptor that always found a way to look at and do things differently, whether it be satellite equipment out of the back of a truck to basically the things they've done with HughesNet and EchoStar and these other great product lines is really an honor. And it's the privilege of my career to learn from you guys and work with you guys.
And likewise for us, I mean, the community that you guys have built is just getting started. I want to congratulate the Cardano community for getting the Alonzo upgrade launched and deployed just a few days ago. And that's going to enable the community to really take root. And we're very excited to be a part of that. So thank you.
It's going to be fun.
Thank you, guys. It's also been a personal pleasure of mine to work with you guys. It's part of it is always how much value can you bring, but you reach a point in your career where it's just, I want to work with people I like working with, and it's been a personal pleasure of mine to work with you guys. Thank you.